Okay, the recording has started. So, again, thank you so much. Joining us shortly will be Lauren Silver from Zoom Grants, and she will go over how to best utilize Zoom Grants to meet your reporting needs. But first, just a few things to start off with. This attendance today is mandatory. So please make sure to sign in to confirm your agency's attendance in the Microsoft form linked in the chat. Also, you can scan the QR code here on your screen and you will be able to. I'm gonna mute everyone for now, but if you have any questions, we can definitely take questions at the end. Or you can raise your hand along the way and we can definitely address those. But for now, I'm going to mute everyone if that's okay. All right. Please make sure to sign in because that will be our way of knowing that you were here. Next slide. So today we are going to go over our reporting of our
I think you cut out.
yeah, okay. My apologies. I just got the notice. Okay, here we go. So in Zoom Grants, you'll be able to do most of your reporting, if not all of your reporting. And that will include your exhibits A, B, and C, which are explained in your contract, and we'll go over them today in our training. For an overview of your post-award features, we can go to Lauren Silver of Zoom Grants.
Hello, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me coming in loud and clear. I am Lauren Silver with Zoom Grants. Thank you so much for having me. And I'm going to give you a quick tutorial on how to submit invoices and reports in Zoom Grants. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Just one moment. So here is a quick tutorial slide show presentation that we put together. Yes, we can offer this to you after the close. So if you start jotting down notes quickly, just so you know, we can provide this and send this after the presentation. First, I saw a question already in the chat. It's a great question. How do you sign in or how do you access your Zoom Grants account? You want to sign in at https://www.zoomgrants.com/login. And you'll see here on your login page that you'll need to provide the email address, which is assigned to your account, and the password to which you have set for that account. If for some reason you forgot your password, it happens all the time, you can click the Forgot Password button to receive an email notification that will allow you to reset your password. And most of you should know that song and dance by now. If for some reason you still are having issues or can't remember the email address, you can also contact our Zoom Grants support team, questions@zoomgrants.com. Next, you'll want to find your application in your list. Whereas before, or up until now, you may just still see your application in the Submitted Applications folder. That is because until it is officially approved in Zoom Grants and a certain box has been checked, which indicates that you've been notified of the award, only then will you see the approved application on the right-hand side of your My Account home screen when you log into your account. Up until then, it's still going to be in the Submitted Applications folder. So if you don't see it just yet, that just may mean that funding allocations have not been recorded just yet. And at the appropriate time, you will be able to access them once you've signed a contract, which is necessary to do before you can start submitting invoices and reports in Zoom Grants. Once you have identified and found that application title in the Approved Applications folder, you'll just want to click that application title link. Now, one question that we get a lot is, do you need to add collaborators? Oftentimes, you've had a couple of people or a team working on the application. You may now have others that you want to invite to work on, for example, editing reports or your financials, or to sign a contract if that's being done within Zoom Grants. To invite a new collaborator to work on your application in Zoom Grants, if you're not already familiar with that process, you'll just need to provide an email address, their first name and last name, and their title if applicable. And then you'll need to check the box next to those areas where they would need to have editing access. Some may, for now, just have their application checked. You'll now have extra boxes that you'll need to check in order to now give them additional access to the report and financial if applicable. That's what you'll need to do if you're inviting a new collaborator. You'll need to then click invite. That's a often missed step, is sometimes you click all of these buttons and put them in there and think, oh, I'm done. You also need to click that invite button to send an email to that collaborator that then gives them access to either the application, report, or financial or contracts. As you're adding them as a collaborator, you can see that you can also dually add them as what's called an additional contact. And you can see down here that we describe an additional contact as somebody that really just receives email notification. They don't actually have access to log in and edit any part of the application, a report, or a financial invoice, such as a collaborator could do. But they do get copied on certain notifications that go out that might be of utmost importance and that are sent through the system via notices at zoomgrants.com. If you want to add collaborators again to the application or additional contacts, just make sure that you either list the additional contact down here at the bottom, just simply separated each one with a comma. No phone numbers will be accepted. It just needs to have email addresses. That's also worth noting. If you do need to delete or change a collaborator, you can do so by clicking the trash can button next to that collaborator to remove access and to go in and add new collaborators at any time.
Lauren, we had a question. Where is the add? How do you add a collaborator? I believe it's the application summary tab.
Exactly. It's going to be navigating down to the bottom of your summary tab within your application.
And it,
Once you click into the application, it'll be right there on the summary tab at the very bottom.
and to add a collaborator, it's only the application contact, correct? That can add or delete.
No, any applicant,
Okay.
head applicant can add and remove collaborators to that application.
Okay. And then another common issue is that maybe the application contacts had either resigned or moved on to another position. They would need to reach out to Zoom Grants technical
Yes,
support, correct? To get
absolutely. And I'll cover the questions and who you need to contact at the bottom. But that is a good
okay.
time to bring it up as well as here is if for some reason somebody has left the organization and has not updated the contacts before leaving the organization, you can also contact Zoom Grant support for any kind of issues you might need for updating contact information or email addresses, that sort of thing.
Okay, thank
If
you.
needed, we may also call in the administrator to vouch for the organization. For example, if you contact us, we won't always just take your word for it that you're the new executive director. We may need to say, is this indeed the new person? Has this person left the organization? Because we have certain protocols to follow. So, the quickest way sometimes to update that information is to send an email to questions@zoomgrants.com and copy the administrator so that they can be in the loop, so to speak, and that we can help make sure that that's done as fast as possible. So, next we'll talk about the process of submitting invoices. When you are clicking into the financial tab of that application, you can then click into invoice to create a new invoice, or you can also click the add invoice button directly from your My Account Home tab. Just keep in mind that when you click add invoice from your My Account Home page, that's going to actually create a new invoice. If you already have an invoice in process, you're just going to want to navigate back to the financial tab within that application and click on the invoice number of that previously created invoice. So you're not creating and working on multiple invoices, each one with a little bit of data within each. So make sure you're reopening the one that you're already working on, not starting a new fresh invoice. Also, this is just an example, so just keep in mind they may be referred to as something different if you see something in Zoom Grants University. To create that invoice, it may be called something else, such as a reimbursement form or something different by the administrator. As you're going into that invoice, you'll want to click the button to create a new invoice, as I said, or click simply that previous invoice title link to open up that existing invoice. You would be able to fill in the fields and upload any requested documents at the bottom as applicable. Once that has been received by the administrator, they would then be able to review that invoice and either approve or, if needed, return that invoice to you for further editing. Once you have received that invoice back, you would need to submit that invoice again if it were kicked back to you for any reason to complete those necessary fields or to provide correct documentation as needed. Once you click that submit invoice button, it's going to be, again, near the top of the invoice. I've asked our development team to also try and put one again at the bottom of the invoice so you have multiple places to find and submit that invoice. But for now, just look for it at the top. Once you know that invoice has been successfully submitted, you'll, instead of the submit invoice button, see a date submitted timestamp there, giving you a little reassurance that has indeed been submitted. And that will be, of course, in Pacific time. Zoom Grants is always set to Pacific time in our system. Next, we'll talk about submitting reports. As you're going through the report, you'll see that you'll have different tabs that you can navigate in, report 1, report 2, and 3. You'll need to click into the report tab and then into the specific report that you need to complete for that time period. And again, you might have a different label for that depending upon if it's a quarterly report or what may be called by the administrator. Similar to the invoice, you can also click the Add Report button directly from your My Account homepage. Although it's different from the invoice, this will just simply take you to the most recent report or reporting period that you're on. It won't create a new report, so to speak, because these are set according to a schedule. So this can be a helpful navigation button from your My Account homepage, or you can navigate to the report or a previous report by clicking to the Report tab in your application. As you're going through the report, note that you'll need to complete every single question. We will do a check to make sure that all questions have been completed before you attempt to submit that report. If, for example, something isn't applicable or doesn't apply, or for any reason, you will at least need to provide some text within that box, such as not applicable or some sort of explanation, because otherwise the system will not allow you to submit that report. This is also a good time to remind everyone that when entering text within a field here within Zoom Grants, it needs to be plain text. So oftentimes, if you're trying to save, for example, bullets or a formatted list that you copied and pasted perhaps from a Word document, those types of HTML formatting will not save within this field. You'll just see the flashing screen going on forever and ever, and it won't be actually saving. To halt that at any time, just simply double click anywhere outside of the box. This works anywhere within Zoom Grants. If, for example, you wanted to, didn't want that to save, you needed to still do some more work on that, you can halt the saving process and correct that text issue before it will then resume that autosave. Same if, for example, your internet goes out for a moment, the system will pick right back up where it left off because of the autosave feature, and you can log back in and pick up without losing too much there. As you're going through to complete the report, You'll want to then be sure to click the Submit Report button in order to make sure that that report has been completed. And once again, you would receive a notification letting you know if any fields are missing answers. It will say, for example, you forgot to answer report question 1, 2, and actually identify which ones are missing, as well as if any document which had been marked as required had not been uploaded. That would also be flagged here. Once you have filled out those missing questions, as well as uploaded any documents, it's a very important step that you click the refresh page button at the top. Not just the browser refresh on your browser bar, but our refresh page button, which essentially tells Zoom Grants, go back and check that work again. I completed those. I want you to do a refresh check of that page. Once that has been done and all fields have been provided at least some answer, you would be able to click the Submit Report 3 button again successfully. If you have any questions on submitting invoices or reports, oftentimes those questions come up as you're doing it. We recognize not when you're sitting here in the tutorial workshop that we're providing today. So we encourage you to contact us. We provide a lot of different ways that you can do that. One way is to click the Help button located in the upper right-hand corner of your page. You can email us at questions@zoomgrants.com or also access us through the help button. Will also take you to the same place. Our Zoom Grants technical support team, who is awesome, are awesome at getting back to applicants very quickly with any questions that they have uh, for invoices, password resets, updated for updates to credentials if somebody's left the organization, any type of issue like that. That's what they're there to help for with. And you can also give us a good old fashioned phone call if you like, 866 323 5404 extension 2, as well as access our online database, Zoom Grants University, at https:// help.zoomgrants.com. And I also wanted to take you over, if I could, to show you what your My Account homepage might look like within Zoom Grants. As you're going through and navigating, you'll see perhaps an Add Invoice, Add Report button over on your approved application side. You can click into that button and be able to see that application. Click Help if you want to see some additional quick answers on how to use Zoom Grants, get to Zoom Grants University. If you have need to contact the administrator, any content questions will be diverted to the administrator to answer, of course. Although if you're having a Zoom Grants technical issue, you can contact us directly by clicking Ask Zoom Grants, which will go to questions@zoomgrants.com. Or if you do navigate over to Zoom Grants University and want to try and find your answer there, you can, for example, type in your question to see some common articles that come up about how to create and submit an invoice in Zoom Grants. You can see here within the College of Zoom Grants University that we have for applicants some articles about how to get started, frequently asked questions, as well as others about how to manage post-award features. And also, if you want to use our uh, Zoom Grants University Help Bot, we can also help you find answers to quick questions, as well as if you are not finding those questions, please contact us at questions@zoomgrants.com. So with that, I will open it up for questions and see if there's any other topics that we can cover while we're here.
Looks like
Hearing
we
none.
don't, yeah, we don't have any questions.
Well, I know a few of you have been through the process before, so I hope this was at least for some of you, a good refresher if you're already a Zoom Grants Pro and know how to navigate easily. Although I encourage you to reach out if you do have questions. That's what our support team is there for, and we like to help our applicants. We appreciate the work that you do so much.
Thank you so much, Lauren. We really appreciate your time.
Of course. I'll hang out for a little bit longer to see if there's any questions that come up or can um, follow up later as well after the training. And I'll be sure to also send this presentation to you now.
Thank you. Okay, we'll proceed with today's workshop. And Adriana is going to go over a few slides with you as we move forward.
Great, thank you, Rosie. So yeah, I will be going over the Exhibit A, B, and C process with you all. I know a lot of you are already familiar with these, so this information should hopefully be nothing new to you guys. Alicia, can you move to the next slide?
Actually, actually, sorry, Adriana. Let me just go over, I skipped a few slides. Let me just go over these slides
Oh yeah,
quickly. We can proceed to the next one. So basically, before we move forward, I wanted to make sure that you are aware of a new guideline that's included in the contracts for both public services and capital. Now, this requirement isn't necessarily new. It's always been something that we've strived for all of our subrecipients to meet, but now it's in the contract. It's a little more clear. And also, what happens before and after is a little clearer. So, what happens before the end of the first 6 months, and then what happens after the 6 months is clear in the contract. So, everybody's on the same page. So, for public services, we are expecting that by half the fiscal year, by halfway through the fiscal year, so by the end of December, you'll have expended 50% of your funding and also have met 50% of your annual goals that you've projected and for CDBG. If you feel along the way that you cannot meet that, you will need to let us know at least 6 weeks prior to the end of the quarter to reporting deadline, and then we can discuss what the issues are and why that can't be met. But the goal is to help our subrecipients stay on track to expend the funding in a timely fashion, and also, the goal on our end is to not get flagged by HUD, because when we go into the fiscal year and we have too much money sitting there for X amount of time, HUD will automatically flag it and then we get put on the naughty list, and we don't want to be put on the naughty list. So we understand that there are going to be a handful of agencies that have that whose busiest time is, let's say, during the winter months. So that means summer and fall. Usually you won't have a lot of activity. We can work that out, but it's all really, it needs to come down to a conversation. It needs to come down to um, reaching out and letting us be aware of it. But what we're trying to avoid is having it be January and finding out that, oops, you weren't able to meet your deadlines. We don't want any surprises, and I'm sure neither do you. So for capital, so the next slide, the capital is similar. It's that you've reported that 50% of the progress has been made on the project, and um, because 50% of the progress has been made, ideally 50% has been also expended. So again, we understand capital projects are have its have its issues in the sense of, there are things that are out of your control, where whether it's, contractors getting permits, all of that stuff. But again, we just ask that a conversation be had early on in the process rather than have it be a surprise or have it be an afterthought. Next slide, please. And let's see here. One more thing. For capital projects, please keep in mind that we will have certain things that will get triggered. So prevailing wage is triggered on all projects except for acquisition and minor home repair. We also have section 3, which applies to all projects that are over 200,000. And then we also have, this is a new one, Build America, Buy America, which is the BABA Act. And that basically states that products purchased in connection with infrastructure projects, so construction, alterations, maintenance, or repair funded by federally financed assistance programs like CDBG must be produced in the United States, and that applies to projects that are over $250,000. And we will go over that directly one-on-one with the capital project subrecipient and the contractors. This all needs to be included in the bid documents so that the contractor who bids on it is aware of all of these requirements and bids appropriately. But just wanted you all to be aware of that. So next slide, please. Any questions? Any questions so far? No? Okay. All right. Moving on to the overview of contract exhibits. So we will go over exhibits A, B, and C. So exhibit A is your statement of work. It's what you're going to do with the funds. And so yes, you have explained that in the application, but in the application, your that was submitted in December, a lot has changed, and then plus your allocation might have changed. So what you asked for is maybe not necessarily what you've received. So therefore, obviously, your statement of work is going to be adjusted. So we just ask that the statement of work matches your allocation and is a little clearer and more defined. Your quarterly reports, your exhibit B is something that you will be submitting both for public services and for capital. Capital is a little different. A capital, it's more of a progress report, but it's still a requirement every quarter. And then your exhibit C is a summary of accomplishments, very similar to your exhibit A, but your exhibit C is what you did do. So we try to make both the exhibit A and the exhibit C match as much as possible so that it's easy on you to be able to report back. Any questions so far? Okay. So like I said, I'm just going to briefly go over these. The exhibit A is your statement of work. It includes your budget, your schedule, your outcome measures. Um, Again, we did reformat it a little bit just to, again, make it easier for you to submit the information. And again, the reason we ask all of this is because, believe it or not, all of this is reported back to HUD. So we include this in our information in our activities that we enter into IDIS, which is the online HUD reporting system. We include all of this information in there. And then we also use this information as a, a, um, a matrix, a guideline as to what our projections are and how many people we're serving. And it is just something that HUD requires. So keep in mind, all of this is necessary for our reporting purposes. And then the next slide will show you the second part of this page. So it's a 2-pager. And again, it just goes over your statement of work, your budget, your schedule, and your outcome measures. Next slide, please. Your quarterly reports are due 30 days after the end of the quarter. So on here, you will see the deadlines. Now keep in mind, Quarter four is shorter than all the other quarters because we require you to wrap everything up sooner than the end of that fiscal year. And that's and then that quarter. And that's because we have to submit everything to our finance department by the end of June. So, in order for us to meet our deadlines, we ask that you submit everything a little earlier. So, keep in mind that last quarter, it's crucial that you're aware that all of these that your last quarter is going to be shorter, which means that if you're going into the fourth quarter hoping to expend over 25% of your allocation, it might be a bit challenging, and we don't want you to leave money on the table. So just plan accordingly, that you are getting about 3 weeks cut out of your last quarter. Next slide, please. So our national objective, again, our national objectives are to primarily assist those who are low to moderate income in our area. We also hope to aid in the prevention of elimination of slums and blight. And then we can also use CDBG funding for an emergency, something that poses an immediate threat to our community's health and welfare. Um, more I would say about 99% of our projects benefit low to moderate income people or areas. And we're over 60% low to moderate income in Santa Maria. So, therefore, we definitely are able to meet the majority of the people in this community. Now, we do have some areas that, regardless of their income, are considered presumed benefit and automatically qualify for CDBG funding, and that is also on your screen. That's abused children, victims of intimate partner violence, the elderly, which HUD considers 62 and above, severely disabled adults, homeless individuals, illiterate adults, persons living with AIDS, and migrant farm workers. Next slide, please. So your Exhibit A, like I said, is due quarterly, and we ask a variety of things. And again, all of this is reported to HUD, and that includes race, ethnicity, income level, and it's not to say that you can't assist anybody who's not low to moderate income. It just means that according to HUD, at least 51% have to fall under that LMI category. So these are the income limits by household, and it's effective May 1st, 2024. Now this might change. It all just comes down. HUD might change it in 6 months. HUD might change it in a year, but we will let you know and we will update all of our information. But right now, if you are a family of four that make under $48,000, you're extremely low income, you could make $130,000 and be a family of four and be considered moderate income. So you could be a family of four, make 130,000 and still be considered low to moderate income under HUD's guidelines. Next slide, please. So again, another question that HUD asks is the race and ethnicity categories, and we have it all. And again, these are just the areas that HUD has in IDIS, so that's what we present to you, and it really comes down to what the individual considers themselves as. Next slide, please. We've also created a client intake form, and it's in Spanish and in English, and it's also online for you to access. And this is created by us in order for you to make for the subrecipient to more easily meet its Exhibit B requirements. So the client intake form that we have designed asks every single question that you'll report back in the Exhibit B. So we created this so that you could give it to your client and they can self-certify, or you can also certify for them. Well, they can self-certify and then you basically sign that they self-certified. And that is something that will more easily allow you to gather the information and then provide it back to us. You don't have to use this form. However, we highly encourage you to use this form when you're doing intakes because it meets everything that you're going to need to report back to us. Next slide, please. So
Oh,
again,
oh,
oh,
oh, I was
am I
gonna say
taking over your section?
I can take over from here.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Okay. Um, was there anything you needed to add or?
Oh, no, thank you.
Okay. So I'll go into the Exhibit B quarterly reporting requirements for capital funding. So per the agency's contract agreement, the Exhibit B must be submitted on a quarterly basis. So the quarterly deadlines are listed in your funding contract as well as in this slideshow. They'll also be listed in Zoom grants as your deadlines that need to be met. So the template for the quarterly progress report can be found on the city's webpage. We'll send out the links following this presentation as well as the PowerPoint. That way you have everything. If project activity did not occur during the reporting period, the agency will be required to provide a brief narrative explaining why. If there was project activity and expenses were incurred during that time, the agency is required to submit an invoice in addition to the quarterly progress report. The quarterly progress report will be uploaded in the agency's Exhibit B report tab for the corresponding quarter. And it'll be at the very bottom under documents requested, and there'll be a line item specifying Exhibit B quarterly report or Exhibit C when you're ready to submit your Exhibit C. So client demographics are only required at the end of the fiscal year or when the grant has been fully expended. So if you have project activity, mainly for the minor home repair, if you had projects completed there during that time or projects that are in progress, you'll report on how many are either complete or in progress during that reporting period. Here is our capital projects template. So those that are familiar with this form, we incorporated both minor home repair and the general capital project so that it's all one page. So just make sure to use the updated form. And this will be on the city's website. So as I mentioned, if billable expenses were not incurred during the reporting period, you would just explain here in this text box. For minor home repair, if project activity occurred, but projects were not completed, so you're not able to bill during that time, please provide a status regarding any progress made or reason for any delays that the agency or maybe even clients experienced during this reporting period. And then just additional documentation that should be submitted to prove project activity. So construction contract, bid documents, our HUD reporting checklist, and we'll go over a lot of these reports and documents in the mandatory pre-construction meeting for capital. So we'll go into that a little bit more then. The Exhibit C, this applies for both public services and capital. There are two separate templates, and we'll show you where they're located on our city's website. So just make sure to use the correct template. This is the final annual report that outlines your agency's accomplishments of the Santa Maria program activity throughout the fiscal year. So you'll either submit this at the end of the fiscal year when you submit your final invoice, or if you expend all of your funding in the second quarter, then you just submit your Exhibit C and final Exhibit B, and then you'll be done and good to go. So the Exhibit A is the statement of work of what you're going to do. The Exhibit B is what you're doing throughout the year, and the Exhibit C will be the summary of what you completed and what you did. So it's just a wrap up of your accomplishments there. And so we changed a little bit. So provide the annual schedule that summarizes what the program's milestones and accomplishments were. The budget breakdown is just the actual expenditures that you did. So if you did not expend your full allocation, you would just explain why here. And then measurable outcomes, this is for CDBG funded clients only. You'll outline the accomplishments and activities that took place with CDBG funding throughout the fiscal year. Did the agency meet its proposed CDBG goal that was reported in your Exhibit A? If you exceeded your goal, explain why. If you did not meet your annual goal, you'll also explain why. So just because we report all of this information to HUD, we like to explain why the numbers aren't, or there's difference within the numbers. So just make sure to provide enough detail there. And then the last page would be overall Santa Maria clients served. So if you didn't meet your proposed Santa Maria clientele, then you'll just explain why. If you exceeded, you'll explain why there. And then just general information about the program. Just a recap of reporting requirements. As Rosie mentioned, the Exhibit A statement of work, those numbers are reported in our fiscal year 24-25 annual action plan. And so those will be reviewed and approved by HUD. So it's important that your numbers throughout the year are consistent with your goals. The agency will submit 4 Exhibit B quarterly reports. As mentioned, for public service, quarterly demographic reports are required, each showing the new unduplicated counts for the quarter. So Zoom grants will automatically calculate each quarter and give you a year to date. So when you submit your quarterly report, you just need to make sure how many new clients you serve for just that quarter. For capital, the demographic reports are due once the funding is fully expended. However, the quarterly progress reports and invoices are required by those Exhibit B deadlines. Exhibit C, statement of accomplishments. The final report will be a summary of your accomplishments. The report must be submitted with the agency's final request for payment. We will not release your payment until we receive all final reports. And the year-to-date total in the agency's Exhibit B report must be consistent with the annual goal reported in the Exhibit A and annual action plan. So again, just make sure your numbers are consistent throughout all of these reports. Does anyone have any questions regarding Exhibits A, B, or C? If not, we can move on to the payment process. Rosie, is
We do have one question in the chat. It says, when I submit Exhibit A, I base it on our yearly projection numbers. If I expend the funding by Q3 and I also submit Exhibit C, my reports will not match Exhibit A. So as long as you've expended your funds and met your yearly projections for CDBG, you're good to submit at any time. We assume that when you tell us you're going to meet, for example, 100, you're going to assist 100 people with the CDBG funding. If you expend the CDBG funding, you've also met those people. So that's why it's so important at the beginning of the year to submit the accurate or what you feel is the most accurate number of people that you'll be able to serve under CDBG. Again, there's a difference between the number of people your entire program serves and then the number of people served under funded with only CDBG. So really, as long as your CDBG numbers are meeting what you said at the as long as at the end of the at the end your CDBG numbers match or are close to what you said you were going to do, and you've expended the funds appropriately, then there should be no problem when you submit your Exhibit C and your final request for payment. I hope that answers the question.
Was there anything else? I'm not able to access the
No,
chat right now.
I don't
Okay.
see any other questions in the chat at this time. And again, if you have any questions after today's presentation, obviously we're always here to answer any questions along the way. Again, we definitely do try to be as accessible as possible and try to answer as many questions as we can. We try to anticipate the questions, and that's why we go over this training. And we do this every year. just as a refresher. But this isn't the be all end all. We're always happy to assist, and we want to make sure that you're successful in the managing of these CDBG dollars.
Thank you, Rosie. So I'll go into payment process. So to submit a request for payment, fiscal year 24-25 request for payment form and summary of expenditure form must be used. Those have been updated, so make sure you're using the updated templates, and they're also available on the city's website. You'll need to submit a signed copy of the request for payment form along with the required backup documentation in Zoom Grants. Please note the original wet signature is no longer required. So as long as that request for payment form is signed and uploaded into Zoom Grants, that is sufficient. A summary of expenditures form must be submitted along with the request for payment form. So I'll go into that in the next couple slides. Agencies may submit a maximum of 4 requests for payments for the fiscal year, and the minimum amount to submit is 1,000. So just make sure to plan accordingly. Time periods cannot overlap with previous invoices in the current fiscal year. So if you have an expense or transaction that overlaps with a invoice that you already submitted, then those overlapped expenses will not be reimbursed. It just creates a lot of issues just going back to old invoices, making sure we didn't already reimburse you for those. So we just look at those dates just to make sure that they don't overlap. Processing usually takes 2 weeks from the time we obtain the request, as long as there's no revisions that need to be made or issues that need to be addressed. So the next slide, this is what our request for payment form looks like. Above, here up at the top, there's a drop-down menu. So there's 1, 2, 3, or 4. And then you'll just leave the fiscal year as 2024. Just make sure to fill in your agency's information, CDBG expenditures incurred from, make sure to fill in the correct dates. And then I have here highlighted in red, this is where the CDBG line item description and breakdown of CDBG line items. So the items listed for the line item description should match your budget section of your Exhibit A. And then the amounts that are listed on your Exhibit A should also be entered here under breakdown of CDBG line items. So these 2 columns will remain the same throughout the whole fiscal year when you submit your request for payments. In the blue column, it's request for payments billed to date. So it must equal the current expended total. So if this is the first request for payment, it would be 0. And then the second request for payment would include the amounts by each line item that have been paid out in the previous request for payments. And then the green column would be the requested amounts that you're requesting for each line item, and then your total would add automatically here at the bottom. We just need a signature from agency representative, and the signed request for payment form, summary of expenditures, and supporting backup documentation need to be submitted in Zoom Grants. And all of the invoice requirements will be referenced in Exhibit B of the agency's funding contract. That way you can reference that at a later time. This is the summary of expenditures form. So for each line item, you'll select which line item you're billing under, and then you would provide the vendor name, transaction date, invoice amount total, and then the amount that you're requesting for CDBG here. And you would do that for each line item. This is located on the second tab of the request for payment template. And this is required for all line items except for salaries. So if you're billing for salaries, I'll go into the next slide here. So if you're billing for salaries, you'll need to include the employee name, payroll end date, employees' total hours worked, the hours spent on CDBG activities, the employee's hourly pay rate, and I just added a note to make sure to not round up to the nearest cent. We were actually monitored by a head rep a while back, and the payroll records were off by cents, and so that's why we got to make sure that we're not rounding. Sorry. You'll enter how many hours the employee spent on CDBG activities. So these hours must be supported with timesheets that include a brief description of the work that staff performed, and you'll verify the CDBG hours the employee worked per pay period. Sorry. You'll also have to provide payroll records, so that includes pay stubs, payroll reports, and any overtime rates must have its own line item. Sorry, Rosie, what you mean? Taking over?
Of course.
Sorry.
It's okay. All right. So moving to the next slide, the subrecipient time and attendance records. Okay, so the salary, so again, this is just for those who, public services primarily, who are submitting their salary. You will submit time and attendance records, as the previous slide showed. So employees work hours need to be billed to CDBG must be documented, include only actual time worked. So do not include any employee fringe benefits except for capital projects. And again, capital project is a different beast, and we will directly meet with every single capital project subrecipient to go over their requirements in detail. So I'm just going to kind of glaze over it for today's purposes. Um, your subrecipient time and attendance records. So this is what we use because we actually here in our division have to do a time and attendance. So every single thing we work on, every single project, every capital project, we actually have to do what we call a time and attendance record. So we put down what we did, when we did it, how much time it took, and that's what we're able to bill to either our 20% admin or our delivery cost for the particular capital project. So we provide this to you as a template. Again, you don't have to use it. If you have a system that works for you, great. But we highly encourage that you do, if you don't have one, that you use ours because we've kind of created it for you and takes the guessing game out of how you have to present the information. Any questions so far before I move forward? I don't see any in the chat and I don't see any hands up, so I'll proceed. So documentation must be legible and complete. Again, for salaries, employee time cards signed by the supervisor documenting employee time spent on CDBG related activities. Time billed to CDBG must have a description of the activity performed to ensure activity is eligible. So for example, case management, counseling sessions, program administration, and payroll spreadsheets must include the hourly rate of the employee or employees. For occupancy, if you're billing occupancy and for CDBG, a copy of the lease agreement with the terms, and it must be up to date, and your proof of payment. For general purchases and direct assistance to individuals, itemized invoices that show a breakdown of purchased items. Ineligible items include furniture and equipment such as electronics. So keep that in mind. Furniture and equipment, including electronics, are not eligible. Proof of payment. So always provide a proof of payment because we operate on a reimbursement basis. So we need to know that it's been already paid for by the agency and we're reimbursing you for that eligible expense. And then again, For construction contracts or any capital contracts, if applicable, certified payroll, Section 3, and BABA, if applicable. Okay, your payment process. So funds can only be used on a reimbursement basis, as I stated. So payments are not made until after after approved costs have been incurred and paid by you, the subrecipient. Errors on invoices or missing documentation will delay the reimbursement. Incorrect or incomplete invoices will be returned for corrections. If quarterly reports, so your Exhibit B, are not submitted by the deadline, requests for payments will be held until the reports are submitted. And the final request for payment will be withheld until all final reports are submitted. And again, very important, the deadline to submit your final request for payment and all the reports are due June 11th, 2025. So again, it's not June 30th, it's not 30 days after June 30th, it's June 11th. I see a question. Just to clarify, you will only need the lease agreement one time unless it changes, correct? Yes. So an updated, so if your lease agreement says that it's good through the end of this the end of this year 2024, in 2025 we assume you're going to renew if it's a yearly lease, so please submit the new lease at that time. But if you have one that runs through the end of the year, then that'll carry you through the end of the year. If you have one that starts July 1st through June 30th, then that should cover the whole fiscal year. Next slide, please. Okay, invoicing do's and don'ts. Do plan to ensure that invoices are submitted on time. Close out your grant as soon as possible. So again, you don't have to wait till June 11th to submit everything. You can, if you've expended your funding and met your CDBG proposed goals, you are more than welcome to submit all of your documentation early, whether it's at the end of the first quarter, the end of the second quarter. As soon as you're done with it, you can submit everything and then be done with us, and then you don't have to worry about us for a while. So we highly encourage you to do that. So if there's a way that you can do that, please do so. You do not have to wait until June. Provide clear backup documentation. A HUD representative once said the file must speak for itself. So our file, we keep a file of every single subrecipient, and we're ready to go with that file at any time. So anybody can come to our office at any time and look at our file, and somebody should be able to look at the file and know from beginning to end what's been done, how much has been expended, who was helped, everything. So we ask that you keep the same documentation that you provide to us. We definitely do that on our end too, but both of us need to keep that documentation. Don't put your agency's funding at risk by missing required deadlines. Very important. The deadlines are there for a reason. Bill for it and do not bill for ineligible expenses. So please realize that there are things that are not eligible expenses. And also keep in mind that expenses must be incurred during the contract period. So that's July 1st through June 11th. Anything billed prior to July 1st will not be reimbursed. So that's also something to keep in mind. Another question: if my bill for July 2024 occupancy was sent to us in June, may I bill you for it? Yeah. Well, let me get
I
back to you on that. I just want to look at the regulation one more time. Or unless Alicia do you
I
have
think
something?
I think we've accepted it in the past as long as it's not paid in June. Um, so if it's paid like in July, I believe we accepted it, and then it's covering July's rent. So that's part of the contract period. But we'll look into it and we'll get back to you. But I believe it's okay. We just want to make sure that the check is that it's paid in July.
Yeah, let us look at the
Mm.
regulations and just make sure um, let me just look at the regulations and I'll get back to you, Karen. And then we just make sure you've signed up. Please, if you haven't done so already, sign up to confirm your attendance. And then what we'll do is we'll send a response to all those that signed up to this question. That way, everybody has that information.
And I just reposted the attendance
Thank you.
link.
Okay. Audit requirement. All right. We're almost done, guys. Almost done. Thank you for hanging in there. Okay, so just a few things. I'm sure this is not a surprise to any of you that fall under this category, but under federal regulations of the Single Audit Act of 1996, an agency must do a single audit if it receives more than $750,000 in federal funds per fiscal year. City staff will review records through an annual monitoring. So if you received funding for 23-24, you will be monitored sometime this fall. And then for those who are here today receiving 24-25 funding, you'll be monitored the following year. So we look into all of this, and this is also part of our HUD requirement. Next slide. So CDBG program record keeping, I did mention that it's important that you keep proper and accurate records of your CDBG program and the funding that's provided to you. Please keep them up to date. Files must be securely stored just because you do have client information and some of that client information may be confidential. So we've never seen an agency not, do their due diligence and making sure that the client's information is protected, but it's just something that we want to just be mindful and remind everybody about. Insufficient documentation is likely to lead to monitoring findings. Findings will be more difficult to resolve if records are missing, inadequate, or inaccurate. Do not place your agency's CDBG funding status in jeopardy by failing to maintain sufficient and accurate records. And CDBG records shall be retained for a period of 5 years from the end of the grant closeout. So for most of you who are going to be closing out your program in June of 2025, the clock starts ticking after that. Um, Again, most of the agencies that we've worked with in the past keep their records for more than 5 years, which is fine. You're welcome to keep them for as long as you'd like, but CDBG requires you to keep them for a minimum of 5 years. Next slide, please. So again, timeliness. You're expected to expend your funds in a timely fashion. HUD does conduct a timeliness test every year. It's usually in the month of May, and that's when it runs a report to see how much money the city has in the bank. And if we have too much money in that bank, um, we put our future CDBG funding in jeopardy. That's why it's very important for us to to expend the funds in a timely fashion throughout the year. So by the time May hits, we're in good shape. Unspent subrecipient funds can place the entire CDBG program into noncompliance. So again, it may not be a big deal for you to leave a little money on the table here, but when we're leaving a little bit here, a little bit there, HUD starts to look at that and go, wait, you're obviously not spending all the money we're giving you. So we're not going to give you that much money because you're not spending it. So we just don't want to get into that. We've been pretty good the last few years of meeting our timeliness test and making sure that we're expending our funding in a timely fashion. So we want to continue that. We want to be in HUD's good graces. Next slide, please. So as Alicia mentioned earlier, all of the forms that we went over today, our exhibits A, B, and C, are on our website. They're easily accessible. You can print them out. You can work off of them. Everything is on here, and we update it periodically with any additional information. Today's training will be on this web page as well. so you can always refer back to it. And it's split up under public services and capital. So as Alicia mentioned, just make sure that when you're downloading the form that you download the appropriate one, whichever one you fall under, which is public service or capital. Next slide. And here's our contact information if you don't already have it. You can contact Alicia or me, and our direct lines, our direct extensions are up on the screen, as well as our email addresses. You can also contact Zoom Grants technical assistance for any Zoom Grants related questions. And again, please don't forget to sign in so we can have a log of your attendance. We appreciate your time. We appreciate everything you do. We're very excited about working together again for many of you. And those who are new, we're very excited to get a chance to work with you. We hope that you enjoy the process. I know that this training might seem um, uh, a lot overwhelming for some, and then it also might be redundant for others, but we just want to make sure that we're all on the same page, there's no surprises, and also just a reminder to always know that we're here. You can always reach out to us. We couldn't do this without you, and we've always had a good relationship with HUD because of our subrecipients. So we want to definitely continue that. So thank you so much for everything that you do. We really, really appreciate it. Any questions before we wrap up? Alicia, do you have anything to add?
I think we covered it all. Thank you all for joining us today. And as Rosie mentioned, you could just reach out to us if you have any questions, either directly, or we have our community programs email address or work group. So we'll provide the PowerPoint after this training, and we'll also upload it to YouTube so you can access it later. But yeah, that's about it.
Thank you so much. Have a good rest of your week. Thank you very, very much for attending and spending time with us.
Thank you.
Bye.